All right, we're going to react to another one. This one is from Obsidian Ant, and it's the best big event, game-changing updates, Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen, and No Man's Skies. This is like one of his space game news videos, which I really, really enjoy. So if you guys don't know Obsidian Ant, bam, there's the link to the video in the chat, so you can go ahead and subscribe there. I think he's probably your best guy to go to for, space sim news. So here we go.
August has been a massive month for the big three space games, each of them receiving somewhat cataclysmic updates that delivered major events. So now some time has passed, how has all this gone? Well, it turns out that some have been way more successful than others.
Yeah, I think the worst one is Star Citizen here.
As with the recent update for Star Citizen, Update 13 for Elite Dangerous arrived in explosive fashion, and perhaps in a far more literal sense. It saw the conclusion of the Azimuth saga with the firing of the superweapon, the Proteus Wave. So, let's start with the name of that weapon, because it's an interesting one. The word Proteus has a number of meanings, depending upon context. Firstly, it's a type of bacteria that can be found in the stomach. That definition really doesn't seem to fit though. So let's look at another definition, one that seems to be more apt. But first, I very quickly need to mention the Thargoids themselves, which, as many of you know, are a huge part of Elite. Thargoids come in various shapes and sizes. Each of them are named after Greek mythology, the Medusa, the Cyclops, and so on.
The storyline stuff of Elite makes me kind of want to play.
Takes on many different forms depending upon the story being told. In some cases, he is a son of a Greek god. In others, he is a prophet. And in others still, he is a soldier. The main point is that Proteus was always changing his nature, and just maybe that is a theme for the Elite narrative. Ultimately, the Proteus Wave itself, the superweapon, changed its own nature. Instead of defeating the Thargoids, it both angered them, as well as seemingly made them more powerful due to human anti-Xeno weapons now failing to work. As you can probably tell, Update 13 for Elite was heavily narrative driven, so much so in fact that it features Elite's first ever in-game cutscene. It also contains numerous set props depicting the aftermath of the super weapons events. All of this then has perhaps made for the most impressive Elite update for well over a year, or perhaps even longer than that depending upon who you ask. Meanwhile, the question of gameplay is still on many people's lips.
Yeah, chat
Update
right
13
now seems
might
kind
have
of
delivered significant narrative updates, but whether it delivered new gameplay still remains vague, or at the very least a work in progress. As best as we can tell, a new weapons grind is about to begin. Existing Guardian-based technology no longer works on the Thargoids within the HIP 22460 star system. Parallel to this, the engineer Ram Tar, as well as a number of other engineers, are asking for new technology to research. Technology that comes from the Guardians and is influenced by the Thargoids. So it's pretty obvious the direction that all of this is heading in. Ultimately then, Update 13 has been
more
an
grinding
awesome update.
It sounds like.
It's done something that Elite has never done before, and done so in a great way. But conversely, it also lacks significant new forms of gameplay. Gameplay that ideally could and should have matched the new narrative being delivered. But that said, we also know that this story is a work in progress and that more is yet to come. What this means in terms of new gameplay, however, is anyone's guess.
What the heck?
Star Citizen's patch 3.17.2 arrived in explosive fashion, delivering some impressive looking, long-awaited content. This also had far more than its fair share of problems, unfortunately.
By the way, this shotgun's
3.17.2 then can be considered a point release. In some respects, it's perhaps filler between 3.17 and 3.18, yet paradoxically it also delivered some pretty important tech in the form of AI planetary navigation. In terms of content, the new missions and shipwrecks are truly impressive, and I found them to be a real pleasure to experience as well. But perhaps the highlight of the month has been the dynamic event Siege of Orison. This involved a criminal organisation known as Nine Towers taking control of a section of the Cloud City, Orison. Naturally, players were tasked with the mission of retaking the city districts. Now, unfortunately, many people have found this event to be somewhat non-functional, at least to varying degrees.
Yes.
But when it was working, yet it was still plagued with a number of problems. For me, I found the event to be fun. I'd even go as far as saying good, but there is a huge list of caveats to go along with that.
Yeah, it's got its
My main
issues
concern
for sure.
was the problematic AI, which I found to be extremely basic and lacking in any form of challenge. Now, some people have told me that the AI worked fine for them and that my particular issues were possibly related to server problems.
Yep.
But that said, I tried the event multiple times and experienced the same dull, boring AI.
Yeah,
so ultimately,
that
I can
doesn't
only speak to
excuse anything. Like, it's okay. So you don't blame the team who made the mission, but it's still the game, you know?
I personally experienced. But for a full rundown of my experience with the Siege of Orison, do check out the link that you can see right now, the link in the video description. So, Siege of Orison certainly had some lofty goals. It attempts to place Star Citizen on the same table as other war combat games such as Battlefield and perhaps even Call of Duty. But of course, I fully accept that Star Citizen is working on a vaster interplanetary scale, both figuratively and literally. However, if Star Citizen wants to play in that battlefield of such shooters, then it's only reasonable it gets compared to such titles. To put it mildly then, Siege of Orison missed the mark by a long way. It had high goals, lofty promises, but overall failed to deliver. But that said, when viewed through the lens of a game in alpha stages of development, a game that is many years away from completion, not to mention also a game that has many technological issues along with new and needed tech that is still a long way off from being delivered.
And is looking at where he was context, like 10 minutes
Siege
ago.
was actually pretty good. That is, when it worked. And when it worked, it could also be quite fun. But as with many things, it would really depend upon how you look at it. Whilst Star Citizen, and to a greater extent Elite, suffered some in-game cataclysms,
this game
the
is just
cataclysm for No Man's Sky certainly unfolded on a much smaller scale. But nonetheless, it did result in players of the Polestar expedition having their regular spaceships rendered all but completely useless. The current expedition for No Man's Sky then is Polestar. This one is centered around the brand new content from the Endurance update. In short, the Polestar expedition is about player-owned freighters. Freighters are so important to this expedition then that initially players find themselves unable to even travel to another star system with their regular ship. A freighter is essential for this task. As you progress through the Polestar expedition, it will cause you to engage with various elements of the Endurance update. Technically then, this in many respects doesn't deliver a lot of new gameplay.
I don't know.
But it does cause you to engage with new content. Personally, I preferred the previous expedition, Leviathan, although I really do appreciate that not everyone enjoyed the permadeath aspect of that. At any rate, Polestar is an interesting expedition that focuses on yet another amazing update from Hello Games. Now, whilst strictly speaking, the game mechanics present with the update are pretty much the same old ones we've had previously, they do at least deliver a load of brand new content. Hello Games then remain hyper-focused on delivering what matters most to gamers: gameplay, engaging content, and new ways to play. There's a lot here that many other developers could certainly learn. Overall then, the past 3 or so weeks for the largest of the space games has been a lot of fun. There's been a lot
make a console game and put it on PC,
to get involved with, and a lot to pay attention to. Whilst Star Citizen's Siege of Orison went nowhere near as smoothly as I'm sure CIG would have liked, it was still an interesting concept. If CIG can get all the problems sorted out for future such events, then who knows, dynamic events could prove to be a significant part of the future of Star Citizen. Elite Dangerous meanwhile tried something completely new with Update 13. It clearly paid off, and it worked extremely well.
Yeah,
the update brought the narrative directly into the game in a way that hasn't really been done before. It's an important step for Elite, and one that I hope Frontier continue to improve upon. The only downside is I would have liked to have seen some new forms of gameplay delivered alongside this update, but maybe this is something that will happen in the future. As for No Man's Sky, this game remains a shining beacon in the genre. Whilst it certainly doesn't deliver what everyone wants, such as hardcore realism or an
I don't know, the art style, the fact that you can play with a few of your friends, but if you have more than just a couple, you can't. There's been some things that have like kept me from enjoying the game. I also feel like it's possible that some of the exploration and gameplay is like a little maybe tedious. So for a streaming game, maybe it's not the best, which always gets me to shy away from things a little bit. But I don't know. Maybe this would be a good game to play while I'm taking a little break.
What it does deliver is a game that perfectly understands itself.
But he's
it not
like
only continues to work to its own strengths, but actively improves upon them. And this is very much apparent in each update and every expedition. So, what do you think of the recent events in Elite, Star Citizen and No Man's Sky? Which ones have you played? Have you played them all? Which ones did you prefer? Do let me know in the comment section below. As always, I'd love to hear from you. That then brings us to an end of this video. As always, thanks for watching. And I catch you guys
Agricultural room
next
modules.
time.
I wonder if all those things are stuff you found. That's cool. That was actually a really cool update video from Obsidian there, because just touching on all the cool things that are going on in Space Sims right now. And yeah, I followed the No Man's Sky stuff a little bit. I definitely don't follow Elite. So Elite looked really, really interesting with the story stuff. I just wonder how long it takes to get to that story stuff and how much grinding you have to get the engineered components to be able to see that content and all that. So I'm kind of like overwhelmed by Elite Dangerous and don't want to invest the time into it, but that's actually just cool. Even just following Elite through videos like this, maybe it's more enjoyable that way. But yeah, thank you, Obsidian.